Now, let's start with the very exciting panel discussion that is lined up. I would like to quickly introduce the panelists. Our panelist is Charlie Stewart, who is the co-founder and CEO of Roger Wilco, Amanda Reiki, founder, director, and CEO of Over to You from South Africa, Janine George, Chief Marketing, Product, and Revenue Officer from Carol Boyce Functional Art from South Africa, Joseph Sindaha, Head of E-Business, Nestle. Our moderator is Julia Alfred, Customer Experience Professional from South Africa. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the panel. Can we have all your videos on, please?
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now handing it over to Julia now. Julia, it's all yours now.
Great. Thanks so much, Pooja. Really appreciate it. I'm so pleased to be here today moderating a discussion about the key topics and insights from the 2021 South African Digital Customer Experience Report. The 2021 report was the third edition of this annual study commissioned by Amanda Reiki of Over to You, Charlie Stewart of Roger Wilco, and myself. What started as a bit of curiosity about what consumers thought about their online experiences has gained momentum, kind of a life of its own, and evolved into a comprehensive annual research project, exploring key themes and trends about how consumers interact with brands online. We wanted to shed light not only on what consumers were doing online, but also how they felt about this and the resulting impact on brand loyalty, purchase behaviors, and attitudes. And while Charlie, Amanda, and I certainly have a lot of in-depth knowledge about the report itself, we're lucky enough to be joined by two industry and customer experience experts, Janine George and Joe Sindaha, who both have extensive knowledge of these topics and insights into how digital customer experience is delivered by South African and global organizations. We hope that today's discussion expands on the key findings and how these are applicable to customer experience teams across South Africa and beyond. If you haven't already downloaded the report, you can do so on the site, the CEM Summit site, or you can go to cx-report.cosa and download it there. And with that, I'd like to welcome the panelists and ask each of you to reflect on the following questions, sort of as a way to help the audience get to know a little bit more about you. So the question is, when did you first become involved with customer experience, and what is the single most significant enhancement in customer experience that you've seen during this time? So Joe, let's kick off with you. Do you want to tackle that one first and let us know a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yes. Thanks, Julia, for starting with me. So hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here today. My name is Joe Sindaha. As Pooja said, I head up e-business, which is digital and e-commerce for Nestle in our Eastern and Southern Africa region. And I started getting involved in CX probably very early in my career, Julia, way back in Canada when I first got started. I joined a publishing company there called Rogers Media. And that was a time when print publications, it was the 2006-07, the start of digital really, where print publications started to realize that maybe they need to digitize. And so it was a massive question in the industry and the market is how do we take something that's been kind of institutional in print and start to bring this content over into digital platforms? So how do you essentially take a magazine and turn it into digital? So that was kind of my first, and a lot of that was around, you know, how do you do this? Technically, we didn't have proper websites and so on. So that was probably the first thing. And since then, I've been obviously involved in building things for brands at Nestle since I joined. So yeah, that would be probably my first time involved in CX. I think the most significant thing, and it's going to sound like maybe a strange one to pick, but I think over the last few years, ratings and reviews as a product and what it's brought to or what it can bring to all e-retailers. And it touches on a lot of the themes that you guys wrote in your report, you know, building trust, answering sometimes the needs of the consumer. So I think a good, strong ratings and reviews product that syndicates well, that kind of involves people in the right way to comment and rate. If you do that right, you will have a fantastic consumer experience on your e-retail platform, talking specific to e-retailers. So yeah, hopefully I answered that, Julia.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I hope that we'll be able to dive into that topic a little bit more as the discussion goes along. Janine, how about you? How long, when did you initially become involved with customer experience, and what's the most significant enhancement in customer experience that you've seen during that time?
Thanks, Julia, and hi, everybody. Kind of going in between, like being able to see and not see with glasses. I don't know what's better, actually. I'd probably start by saying, I feel like my whole career has been centered around customer. If I kind of look back at the last 2 and a bit decades, what started off after my engineering degree in South Africa and kind of making product. If I think about making washing powder, making beer, and then kind of moving to the UK and developing financial services propositions, is that I got to really understand what customer expectations are in terms of functional usage, right, of stuff that they're going to buy. And then the last 10 years has been about selling product, okay? Customer experience and I guess CX PA has been around for the last 10 years. And I feel like the focus on digital transformation, coming from financial services, the last 5 years in retail, and really thinking about how social media and marketing's kind of changed that landscape in terms of selling. For me, it's about being at the heart of customer need and really trying to navigate a very competitive landscape. And being at Carol Boys and still creating beautiful product, but really trying to understand how we get that into the hearts and minds of everybody's beautiful homes ultimately. Your second question, which is around the most significant change, I'm probably going to say payments. If I think back over the last 20 years, 5 years ago, I left the UK, I could leave my house, having left my wallet, use my mobile phone to pay on the tube, get to work, buy a coffee, get my groceries and come back home. And I think if we think about the change of financial services in South Africa over the last decade, the fact that we now have the ability to pay with a QR code, we have Apple Pay finding its way into mobile now, and then, just being able to do Swift EFT. The last time I touched my credit card to make a payment, for me, taking the hassle out of the payment process during the customer journey, for that part in the journey that you don't want to think about, I think for me, that's probably the most significant change that we've seen in the industry to date and is ever evolving. So that's quite exciting.
Excellent. Sounds like your experience is that of probably many customer experience specialists, is that you've been working in customer experience for a long time, well before it was called customer experience. I think that's a pretty common experience for those of us who find ourselves in this career. Amanda, over to you. No pun intended, or maybe intended. What about you? When did you first become involved with customer experience?
Well, I was going to say I'm actually a bit of an imposter, but you made me feel better, Janine. Was that in a way my entry point into it is much more as a brand person, as a marketing person, and as a researcher. So I guess, but I've been in retail online and offline for a lot of my career. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking, I was sent by my then boss at Econ to go and work at a store in Toyando in Limpopo. Look, Google it, you'll see how rural it is. That was her way of making us realize that the experience that shoppers had was what we were all about. So I thought I was going to a fancy head office job, and instead I was in the rural Toyando. I was for a good few weeks, but I guess what I really started to realize in that role was the importance of the simple things, people being able to find the price, make their way around the store, pay properly, etc. But also it was very important to her and to all of us there that we were delivering a great experience. And then sort of flicking forward a bit in my role as In the Bag, which was one of the first online shopping sites in South Africa, part of the Bolster group then, we made almost every single mistake in the book there around giving people an abominable experience. It was sort of 20 odd years ago, because we hadn't got there quite in terms of managing it. So I think in terms of the greatest enhancement as a data junkie, I would say what I find absolutely amazing is that you can track now. You can see where people, if some of the journey is happening online, you can see where you're losing people. You can see where your blockages are and what's working and not working, which is phenomenal. But the brand person in me, wants to say fundamentally what you're trying to do from the time they encounter your brand is to make them feel happy. So whether or not they check out with you that time or not, they must have had a great experience. And so that's kind of how I see it, because fundamentally, as we know, customer experience is brand experience. So that's me.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Charlie, can you bring it home for us and share with us when you first became involved with customer experience?
Thanks, Julia. I think my response is perhaps slightly esoteric. My first understanding and real grasp of the importance of customer feedback came when I was a cub reporter on my student newspaper back in the days I was at university. And the editor used to decide where to place columns in the newspaper based on customer feedback, which in those days came in the form of the post bag. My first few columns languished in the back pages of the newspaper, but I pretty quickly realized I could game the system. If I went out to market and spoke to the students, found out what interested them, what were their pain points, I could then tailor my columns so that I was better catering for their need points. So, it didn't take long, to the bemusement of my fellow writers, before I started getting premium placement in the newspaper. So that was a really understanding back in those sort of formative, student days of the need to get out and talk to your customer. I think that latterly, over the last sort of 14, 15 years since I founded Roger Wilco as a digital agency, I've been in the really privileged position of working with lots of different businesses and seeing their approaches to customer experience. And certainly in the formative days of the agency, when we were working for a fairly eclectic mix of big brands and more entrepreneurial-based companies, it was clear that at a brand level, there was a significant degree of arrogance towards the customer. I think brands simply didn't have the capability or the wherewithal to manage large groups of customers. So customer service was shocking. That contrasted completely with the experience of working with entrepreneurial SMEs who knew their customers inside out and worked really hard to please them, to ensure that they were presenting the right offers to them, making sure that they walked the entire journey with them. And I think one thing that has changed significantly over the past decade has been the influence of technology, MarTech in particular, and the way that that's allowed us to better understand and tailor propositions to individuals. So to my mind, the greatest advance we've seen in the CX field is personalization, the ability to start pushing out messages at scale, but ensuring that each of them are unique to the individuals we're trying to reach, so that we create an essence of interest in the customer that we're talking to. We're doing one-to-one marketing, not one-to-many. It really has revolutionized, when done effectively, the manner in which brands engage their audiences.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Great. And with that, I think let's dive straight into some of the key topics that we want to cover today from the report. The first one is, a major finding from this report, different from the previous 2 years, which is that the e-commerce market has really matured kind of in the wake of COVID, but that retailers are leaving a lot on the table. We quantified 12 billion Rand annually on the table. That consumers said they would spend more if they had better experiences. 96% of the survey respondents said that they would spend more if the experience was better. So this first question is for Amanda. How do you think that brands out there can appeal to a new cohort of shoppers who are more representative of South Africa's mass market and kind of up-and-coming middle class, rather than South Africa's kind of e-commerce early adopters, which we oftentimes think about as, higher income earners, higher LSM groups?
Well, I think the answer to this is they do it by an incredibly solidly thought through value proposition that is then well executed. And a brilliant recent example of that for me would be 60/60. and we know that they've had well upwards of 1 million downloads. And we also know that many of those are newbies. They are new to online. So how did they do it? They did it by actually really understanding and setting the journey out very, very clearly. So in terms of your original question about how they behave versus the more experienced, sort of seasoned online shoppers, I mean, I think the seasoned online shoppers are now more experienced and might be able to make their way through a bit of a clunky journey. And they might also be a bit more curious and a bit more interested in the whole process. Whereas the newbies, I think, will be quite quickly turned away, and they'll either fall out of the online shopping world totally. But what I think is far more likely than that is that they find someone who is offering a much more seamless experience. I don't know if that answers what you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, do you think then that organizations find themselves kind of delivering two different types of experience, or do you think everybody just needs to, live up to the bar of, what's going to appease the newbies who might be easily frightened off?
Well, I actually don't think you need two experiences. I think you need one very intuitive experience. And I think that's the key, is you shouldn't really be having to deliver at different levels. It should be intuitive, and the word lowest common denominator sounds a bit derogatory, but you should be delivering to the least experienced, least seasoned person, and it should be, and I think that's where testing comes in. Testing is this, can a person who's never shopped online check out, and can somebody who has, I mean, the people who seasoned at it are not going to battle. But you've got to test it with the lowest common denominator.
Mm. Yeah, and the research found that there are definitely some organizations in South Africa in particular that are, real standouts with this. The study found that, Takealot, for example, was organically, spontaneously mentioned by quite a few of the respondents, and certainly that's an organization that has the ability to do lots of testing and to refine experiences in an ongoing way, which is tough because the small organizations might not have the sort of ability to do that. Yeah.
Or necessarily the scale of customer, right, Julia? I think that's the other thing about Takealot is, they're a house of brands, and so ultimately what you have is the ability to navigate a range of products over so many different categories. And what that brings is scale, right? So, and with that scale, obviously scale in investment, scale in feedback and insight and data analytics and what works and what doesn't work. And no doubt the kind of investment in the competency and the capability to be able to analyze that information and make change. So yeah, it's like, Takealot is our Amazon, isn't it? Over here in South Africa, until Amazon comes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I mean, Amazon is already here and in a couple of different ways. I mean, both from an employment perspective, I mean, there's a huge office of people working for Amazon in Cape Town. And then additionally, I mean, people are ordering things on Amazon. I mean, there's the extra added complexity of, international shipping and whatnot. But, this year's survey found it was like 12% of consumers, I think, Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, were branching out.
Okay. Slightly more than that, but yes, there's certainly a fair percentage are shopping, and that's a point that will come up, probably as part of the conversation. Is I think that everyone's playing against everyone. So local providers are playing against international providers, and that makes it tricky. And again, who has the scale that you spoke about.
Yeah. And, in addition to these, massive platforms, we also have, we've got social media too. So, social media is, not only a place where consumers can share their feedback about experiences and kind of hold brands to account, which, you know, some would argue is actually kind of where customer experience really gained momentum, because for the first time, you know, everybody had a megaphone in their pocket to, you know, let people know when brands weren't living up to their promise. But, you know, it's also become a place where organizations can sell things. And it's this amazing, rich source of insights. Amanda, you were speaking about that in response to the first question about the importance of understanding, you know, consumers in this kind of data trail that the digital world brings about. So it's become this really important channel for managing the customer journey and understanding customers. Janine, I'd like to ask you, how can brands leverage social media to deliver great customer experiences?
Yeah, it's those two words, social media. It's quite scary, isn't it? I mean, like you said, Julia, you know, it's gone from a marketing platform, or actually a chatting platform and a conversation platform, and it's evolved into ultimately another marketplace, right? Where people are going in, finding product, finding prices, getting their reviews and ratings. Joe spoke about that earlier, kind of review and rating platform. I mean, it's Instagram, it's Facebook, right? People are going over there, and I think the report says north of 55% of people, and I think in South Africa, higher than 60% of us make our decisions based on what we see in social media channels. So ultimately, if you're not there, you're not having a conversation and you're not being featured. I mean, it goes from picture to video to stories and reels. I mean, I don't know what's next. I think, Julia, to answer your question about how we leverage it in the right way, I think for me, the part that's most important is ultimately engagement. I mean, at Carol Boyers in the last year, we have tripled the amount of designers and marketing and digital professionals we have in the business, because we want to make sure that what we're listening to in social media channels, we can implement in our product design process, right? So what we're seeing is ultimately the focus that's shifted from necessarily post-product selection to taking insight and really leveraging it and thinking about what the customer actually wants. So when we launch the product, we know we're 90% of the way there. So, so for me, it's definitely using user-generated content, taking feedback, and probably being human. I think we're in the age of automation where, you know, we've gone through the chatbots. We know that we want to reply instantly, but actually customers don't like that. They don't want to feel like they're being spoken to by a chatbot all the time. And so what we're doing in our organizations, and I think the learning that I've had in the field, is that make sure that you respond and you can be automated, but actually you've got to be human in that response. You've got to speak to Charlie, you've got to speak to Julia, you've got to speak to Amanda, because the minute you lose that personalization, you actually just don't have any skin in the game. So, so yeah, I guess get the foundations of customer services right, respond to people, and just ultimately listen, really. I mean, our digital people over here have got people's numbers saved on WhatsApp. You know, we're omni-channel to the degree of however you want to talk to us, you talk to us. But for me, it's just about, being able to listen and be human. I hope that kind of gives a flavor of, you know, I think quite a lot of the change and that we've seen in the industry and what a lot of people are having to do. It's quite a scary place to be.
Scary, but exciting.
But it's so exciting and so fun. I mean, guys, we love being on Facebook and Insta. I mean, our customers, you know, they take our product, they style it for us. They tell us how they want to see it. You know, they're putting it in their kitchens, they're putting it in their bedrooms, they're telling us the colors they want and the designs they love. I mean, if you can't leverage that, right there, it's, you know, if you think about the old adage of, you know, going out with a questionnaire, sitting in somebody's house, I mean, you know, they're really helping us. And so, like I say, scary, but just really fun and exciting place to be. Yeah.
And an amazing way to, you know, remain human in this age of digital customer experience. So important. I'd like to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about the big elephant in the room, which, you know, from our study was cart abandonment, which, you know, so the study identified that there was 12 billion Rand left on the table from, you know, kind of experiences consumers saying that they would spend more if experiences were better. So there's this, opportunity for growth. But then, there's also this massive issue of cart abandonment. So people just kind of abandoning ship on their carts, getting partway through the process and just, kind of totally crashing out, deciding that they're going to do something else. And that's costing retailers, something to the tune of 20 billion Rand a year. So it's huge. And ultimately, it sounds like powerful online propositions are needed to do this. Shipping fees and lengthy delivery times, something that's just so essential to online shopping and online customer experience, were both highlighted as top reasons for cart abandonment, and also customers not spending more online. So Charlie, I wanted to ask you, do you have any thoughts on what's the key to cracking this customer experience pain point?
Yeah, I think shipping's a strategic lever. And what concerned me is that we've made huge evolutions, I think, in shipping processes, in shipping options over the last few years. I mean, we've all seen the drop collect boxes spring up at petrol stations. I've got a holiday home in a little village, remote little village, and the other day I was delighted to see Perco installing some of their collection lockers there. So against that, I was puzzled to see that in this year's report, the number of people who say they frequently abandon transactions actually rose from our inaugural report in 2019. I think back in 2019, 71% of people are frequently abandoning. This year, it was 76. So that's a real concern for me. Why are we not addressing this big issue around the surprise of what shipping costs? I think there are a number of different things organizations can do here. And one of them is invest in some proper conversion rate optimization. Run a series of experiments to try to understand where the drop-off points are taking place. I read an alarming statistic the other day that said that for every $92, and this is a global stat, for every $92 that is spent on customer acquisition, bringing people into the funnel, only $1 is spent on conversion rate optimization and truly understanding why they fall out, why they don't, conclude the transaction. Gobsmacking, and it's an entirely different rant, and I'm not going to get into it at the moment, but I do feel that organizations spend far too much on acquisition and far too little looking after and delighting the customer. But I think there are a number of things that people can do when it comes to shipping. One only needs to look at the likes of Takealot or Amazon. As soon as you land on a product page, there is a clear indication of whether that product is in stock, whether it's going to be fulfilled by them or by a third-party seller, and what the anticipated lead times are for shipping. So, smaller etailers who don't necessarily have the inventory management systems that will tell them, yes, I've got 10 units of this in stock, need to look at ways of better managing inventory so they can provide a clearer view to the customer as to when that product can be shipped. If they can't manage it themselves, then perhaps they should look at trading on the marketplaces. More and more brands, large brands, small individuals are trading on marketplaces. They've got the systems to improve the whole shipping experience. I think the second part of shipping that became very problematic, and I think that while I think 51% of people said that high shipping fees were a problem, the other 32% said that delivery times were the issue. But the shipping fees, again, is a bit of a conundrum. And I truly understand, why organizations typically set a minimum basket price for free shipping. But there are ways that we can, pull different levers to encourage people to increase their basket size. I very rarely see it. If I load something to the basket that costs 80 Rand, but the minimum order value is 100 bucks for shipping, would it not make sense for the brand to start pushing me to related products, stuff that other customers may have bought in the past, that will incentivize me to add that additional 20, 30 Rand purchase into my basket to give me free shipping? So, two very simple takeouts, really not difficult to execute. Then I think that, another thing that we're seeing is organizations beginning to move away from the single DC, starting to decentralize distribution and dispatch. And I think that some of the in the pharmacy space, I know that a couple of the big Pharmacy companies have done this to great effect, where they're working on a sort of a hub and spoke basis with lots of localized delivery drivers. I mean, emulating, I think, the Checkers 60/60 model, where we're seeing product being delivered from a site that is closer to the consumer. This rapidly speeds up delivery. I mean, Checkers 60/60. I mean, Amanda alluded to it earlier in the presentation. Has turned people's expectations of what good shipping is on its head. Why can't I have my pharmaceuticals for whatever it is that I'm ordering from Takealot delivered to me in 60 minutes if Checkers can do it? So, looking at decentralization, I think would be a very, very, very good move for more organizations.
Yeah, it's certainly, an issue that needs to be looked at creatively. Yeah, sorry, Joe, you were to say something?
No, I was going to say, it's interesting. Charlie brought up the last one. If I could just add that, I think the idea of bringing it closer to the consumer is very interesting. We're seeing it on our side now, where Charlie, they're calling them dark stores, right? A lot of these, and we're seeing a lot of them pop up around Joburg. Last week, in fact, I went out to meet with Airlift, who are new quick commerce. They're just getting started here, and they're claiming 30-minute delivery right now. Whether they can do it or not, I hope we'll see. They're claiming within 30 or 40 minutes, which is even faster than Checkers 60/60 can do it, right? And that's really been a phenomenon in the last year. So I think this concept of the dark store and stocking also, because the Checkers 60/60 works well, but they pull from store. I think having your own setup and your own location where you're in control of the stock, in the cases of people like Airlift, is also going to hopefully help this quick commerce world. So just a small build there on because it's part of it is stock management as well, I think. So anyway, but yeah, just a small build.
And absolutely. And I think also, Charlie, just this, obviously the locations create overhead, but it gives you flexibility in terms of speed and movement of goods. But the other thing is we shouldn't lose sight of is the fact that, I'm okay to wait for certain things. Like for my food, I might want it in an hour, but there might be something else I've got, a birthday for next week. And so a couple of days is fine. And so I think the sentiment shouldn't be lost around small businesses and kind of, medium-sized companies like ours that say, actually, it's okay to understand what that expectation is, because faster isn't necessarily better. And we can't all be quick. We are also in South Africa, and we have some people that order things in very far-flung areas in very rural communities that want our product. And so they're also okay to wait. So, but yeah, I think this whole kind of movement to.
But isn't that's going back to the need, the customer need.
Yes,
and I think that's such a valid point, is that, if I haven't got milk in my fridge, I need it now, but absolutely will I wait for a beautiful pewter Carol Boy's piece? I will, it's no problem. But I think you've got to know where you are. And I think things like pharmaceuticals, as you said, Charlie, that's one that you
critical place.
Would be a critical one.
Yes.
I think just to add to that as well, I was talking to one of the big auto giants the other day and looking at their online performance, and increasingly car sales are moving online. And the challenge there is buyer's remorse kicks in. You go and you buy your, spend $500,000 on a piece of German automotive engineering, and you then have to wait 6 months for it to arrive. So communication during that void is the only way of addressing the consumer concern. And particularly in that space, we're all very familiar with the concept of buyer's remorse when it comes to buying cars, making sure that you keep the customer, the advocacy, turn the enthusiasm of the purchase into advocacy during that gap before the product actually lands and is delivered.
Yeah, I mean, historically, there's been this view by the retailers of the customer journey for e-commerce ends at the checkout, but actually, for many consumers, that's probably where it begins. So organizations need to kind of change the way that they're thinking about this. Shipping fees and delivery times were a pain point that popped up several times in the research. Something else that came up specifically when looking at reasons for cart abandonment was the lengthy and cumbersome purchase processes. And given the popularity of streamlined purchase processes like Amazon's one-click solution, the kind of simple checkout processes that we see from like the Takealot. Why do we think that so many online retailers have been slow to clean up their online shopping experience? Joe, I was wondering if you could tackle that. And then also maybe just, shed some light too on why you think that, organizations, these things should have been addressed so long ago. I mean, they feel a little bit like kind of housekeeping items, like why can't we get our house in order? So what do you think is going on that's preventing that?
Yeah, a few things. I think, look, first on the actual retailer side, I think, because we face this as well in a different way when we're looking to build products. I think the first thing is that in general, tech is expensive. The investment in tech is expensive, right? And to alleviate things like cart abandonment and so on, you've got to really have your tech integrated in the right way. So I think a lot of e-retailers grapple with things like, do we build something that is custom? Do we get a Magento, a Hybris, Shopify, whatever, an out-of-box solution, and use all of its tool sets that come with it? Or do we build something for ourselves and kind of build it over time? So I think that's question number one that they grapple with is what do we do? And regardless of what you choose, by the way, there's still integrations you need to do with the PSP, with the logistics side. So all those integrations, if not done right, and if the right tech partner isn't involved, have a lot to do with cart abandonment and people getting frustrated. So I think, and we often overlook that, and maybe in conferences like this don't talk about it enough, but I think integration of tech and having the right solutions involved on the tech side is key. So they grapple a lot with that. The other piece is probably, Charlie kind of spoke to it, but do we have the right link to consumer services? So you just mentioned it, Julia, as well. The journey starts on checkout. Yes, afterwards, is consumer services plugged in? Is there a specific promo or price off that they know about, which when consumers call in, that they're aware of? So I think also this lack of integration between consumer services, people answering phone calls, social media queries, whatever, is also a bit of a challenge. But I think, at least in my time in SA, outside of Takealot, which we've discussed, I think a lot of the customers we're talking to are mainly grappling with tech and what tech to invest in, right? So that's the first piece. I think on your second one, more than anything, it's probably just really around how do we. So I started to think about things we've done locally here, right, on making it better. So Charlie again spoke to some of it, but adding value into the delivery. So if I'm partnering with someone to deliver on my behalf, can we partner with brands to throw in product from a sampling standpoint? Can we, for example, personalize? Recently, I came across a fantastic company, small company here in South Africa, who are butchers. They're called the Good Meat Company. Maybe some of you know them. They're phenomenal, right? You order a box from them, the way it's personalized, they handwrite their cards. When you receive it, you feel like they've thought about you and the purchase that you've made. So I think Charlie also spoke about personalization. The report highlights it. But those little things of just writing a card handwritten and including that within the delivery service, I think are also important things that are outside of the tech. These are just physical, tangible things that you can do. In our case, for example, we've worked closely with our partners to just drive more value. If we've got a new product launch or a new variant, we're sampling a lot of that. We're giving it almost as a surprise and delight. We call it surprise and delight. So we'll add elements like that as well. So I think it's just thinking about how you can integrate certain things to make it so that when the shopper is receiving it, they are exactly that. They are surprised and delighted, hopefully. But I think tech is a big challenge, Julia, and I think one that probably we don't think about enough because we just think, oh, well, the website's working and it's receiving orders, but not enough emphasis, I think, is put on making it. Amanda used the word seamless, and it's kind of it's a great word. I love the word, but it's so hard to technically build something that is seamless because you're reliant on so many vendors. So I think that's the main challenge.
Yeah. It was interesting you brought up the word integration a couple of times. So, it's no secret that silos are like kryptonite for customer experience. Integrating systems and processes is so important, and challenge for business.
In an omni world as well, now we're starting to see it. Maybe last thing I'll say, and again, this is experience with the retailers in the last 2 years in South Africa, and this is a positive thing. But when we started talking to them before COVID on e-com, they had offline buyers and online buyers, right? Today, we're seeing also the retailers slowly merge those buying teams or those marketing teams to try and operate more. And so Pick and Pay's done a good job of this, right? Where they're going, listen, we're omni now. Let's have an omni conversation, right? So we're starting to see that more and more. But I think on their end as well, the more, again, to use the word integration we see between their retail outlets staffing and their online or .co people staffing, if those two worlds come together, they'll get even better and better, I'm sure, on this whole CX piece. Yeah, anyway. Hope that answered.
You also mentioned personalization and, the example of the butcher who, included a handwritten note. One of the other kind of surprise findings, and I think it's something that after the fact, we were like, okay, actually, this makes really good sense. But, one of the kind of surprise findings from the research was that unboxing is a hugely important moment of truth along the customer journey. It was the most important moment of truth is unboxing. Yet it's, something that I think is a real afterthought for a lot of organizations. I don't know how many of you have ever received something that you've ordered and it looks like it was shoved into the box and the person in the warehouse was having a particularly bad day. And that's, that's like not a great way to receive a product. Janine, I was wondering, do you know of any local brands that have really hit the nail on the head with this one? And are there any sort of best practices for providing a great unboxing experience? I'd imagine in the world of apparel goods, for you guys, that's probably a really important moment of truth. It's something that you guys have probably known for a while, and I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's a definite factor that we do think about very actively, actually. We're heading into festive season now. We have 24 retail stores across South Africa and our own online site. So there is a very big focus on our own consumer channel. But we obviously partner with the likes of Takealot and Yuppie Chef and other B2C businesses as well who stock our product. And that experience around a customer purchasing something and receiving it and making the surprise and delight with the unboxing journey is actually really critical because, to Amanda's point earlier, it's at every single engagement that you need to go, wow. Two questions you asked. The first one was who's doing it well and what are we thinking about? Let me do us first and then I'll kind of end on a local company because Amanda's already stolen the 60-60. I'd say for us, it's again about being human. So we actually have a team of people that we've had to employ here to re-wrap a lot of our online gifts. They choose wrapping paper. We also write out personalized cards. I have people here that we don't print stickers. We write them out. So it looks like it's been written by somebody. No doubt, Joe, you can tell me we should automate it and print it out and whatever. And that probably will come in the future at some stage. But for now, that for us is quite a big, significant factor around people opening it up and realizing there's wrapping and a box. And that's a real stand-up for us. And we have a very similar unboxing experience in our stores where, the bag itself is a big deal. You come and you get a Carol Boys bag. Everybody knows what that wrapping looks like. So that moment of truth is a big one for us, Julia. I know we're almost finished, so I'm going to be quick. I'd probably say it's not just about the product. It's about the way that it's boxed and the outer carton as well. And we've stolen with pride here a little bit. In the last year and a half, we did use a lot of bubble wrap because we have plates and things that break as well. So not only pewter, but aluminium, stainless steel, that's fine. It's the glass, the crockery, and the things that break. So our operations team, we've moved away from bubble wrap and we've moved to Guillaume and void fill, which is obviously a more sustainable solution. And we've actually copied somebody which we love, which is the company I'll talk about, which is Faithful to Nature. So I don't know if any of you have ordered from Faithful to Nature. You know what you're getting. The box is lovely. They've got their name on the outside. We're doing that now. You open it up, things are standing, they wrap really nicely, and they throw in something, for free as well. So to Joe's point about kind of making that surprise and delight experience. And it's just, when that box is there, it's going to feel good when you open it. And so we're trying to do the same here really, and kind of, try and be sustainable. It's not always easy because a lot of suppliers and the way that they package and things that they bring our product in. But I feel for us, it's about, you don't want stuff on the floor. You want to be able to take things, reuse it potentially in one of your own birthday gifts and take it somewhere. And so for us, it's a real focus. And I think hopefully we get to improve and steal from other people who are doing really well in the future.
Shamelessly steal.
I don't think it's stealing. I think it's being inspired and, learning from best practices, and, Faithful Nature is a great example. I think they've, hit the nail on the head with their unboxing experience. So great example. Thank you. I'd like to talk for a minute about the importance of trust, another really big theme from the study. And kind of explore some of the key considerations that, provide consumers with the reassurance that their money's in good hands. So the report pointed to 3 factors that build customer trust. The first one is experience itself. So a good experience adds momentum to word of mouth recommendations and also brand reputation. We've, kind of already explored some of the ways that brands can improve their online experiences, but that's kind of a tricky one for brands that are up and coming and new to e-commerce. So these brands are going to need to build their presence. What are the best ways to reach would-be online shoppers and establish brand recognition and build that trust? And I am going to throw this question to Amanda.
I think some of it's already come up, but we know that brands, local brands, no matter how small you are, competing quite often against much bigger players with much better resources, be they international, be they local. So it's almost about showing, being what you want to be. So you've got to show that you are a player, and how you do that is by having a beautifully designed website. I think those things matter. I think it's also about some of the good old brand building. You've got to build your brand. You've got to, and that's a tricky thing, given that somebody like Takealot's, spending an absolute gazillion building their brand, but you have to do those things. And then I think it is about, we had I think 12% of people calling out things like data privacy. You've got to give them the assurance that they're in a safe space, that they're shopping in a safe space, payments already come up, but that they are safe to check out from your store, that they're in good hands, all of those things. So it's both the aesthetics and the functional stuff that builds the trust. And then I think it is word of mouth, and we've seen the word of mouth. I think so much of this is powered. Joe, you mentioned recommendations earlier, and that was a massive finding for us around how much people are referencing other people's experiences. So I think the single biggest thing you can do, the single best thing you can do if you are a smaller player, is to deliver a really great experience, because that will amplify the word of mouth, and that in itself, that is what gives the trust. Is the recommendation. I don't know if that answers it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great experiences. We get trust, which, turns into word of mouth experience or word of mouth recommendations. Interesting. You brought up, providing assurance around, data security. That's probably something that's of particular importance to, the newer cohort of shoppers. If you were to, for example, speak with an American online shopper, online shopping is so prolific there that, there wouldn't be very many concerns about data security and payment security, whereas you speak to a South African online shopper who's new to the experience, and that actually might be very something that's really top of mind. So different kinds of challenges in this market. So I've got a question now that I'd like to pose to Charlie. Looking at kind of the importance of peer reviews and peer-to-peer recommendations. So earlier we spoke about the billions of brands that e-commerce companies are currently leaving on the table. This still represents like a relatively small piece of the overall retail pie. And that's one of the things that people always say about e-commerce is it's always such a small piece of the overall retail pie. But an overwhelming majority, 98% of the survey respondents said that they go online to research at least some of their purchases, even if the ultimate transaction happens elsewhere, like in store. So that means that what happens online actually has a major impact offline. And it's undeniable that online reviews are an absolutely essential part of a brand's offline success. If consumers are going online to do research, then it's really important to make sure that you're managing that well. What's the best way for organizations to proactively manage consumer reviews on a company website or another formal review platform without compromising the validity or integrity of these reviews? Because it's a fine balance. You want to make sure that they're consumers can trust them and believe them, but also proactively manage those. What do you think?
Yeah, I just feel that we're simply not doing enough with reviews in South Africa at this point in time. And again, we're fortunate we have this treasure trove of information coming through the survey now that we've been running it for 3 years. And one of the things that intrigued me this year was seeing people's willingness to share positive news. When we first ran the survey, 43% of people said they'd share a good experience. This year it was 56%. So we actually have a very large community. More than half of people who are buying stuff online or engaging with brands online want to share the good news. I did wonder whether it was a bit of Stockholm syndrome after months and months of lockdown. Brands simply they're not responding to this. There are lots of different things that we can do. So either in isolation, a brand can pop a comment or a review section onto its own website, or they can plug in. I think some of the larger manufacturers and bigger brands can utilize review syndication platforms that will take a review of a single product and then populate that on the websites of all of the etailers who are selling that product. Very, very simple. There are some amazing solutions out there. So good opportunities for brands to tap into the products from people like Bazaar Voice or Power Reviews. Taking it back to a very relatable experience, and I'm sure that most of us who have ever wanted to go to a restaurant or book a hotel go straight to TripAdvisor. First thing we do when we get to TripAdvisor is we read the reviews. So there are lots of third-party platforms as well that organizations can tap into. It might be Hello Peter. Hello Peter is generally a place where people post negativity, but if people post negative reviews about you, jump onto it as a brand. Make sure that you're responding to it timeously. It's an extension of the community management that we see, or it should be an extension of the community management that we see taking place on social media. If you respond to consumer insight on Facebook within 30 minutes, why are you not doing it the same thing on Hello Peter? So again, I think one of the constraints actually, and Janine made a very good point earlier where she spoke about how the Carol's Boys digital team has exploded over the last couple of years, and often it does come down to resource constraints. So if resource constraints are a problem for you, then look at review syndication.
Yeah, definitely. I think, the managing reviews through sites is something that organizations just aren't doing enough with. I think you hit the nail on the head, Charlie. There's so much space there, and social media. I think teams are probably a little bit more familiar with, dealing with feedback on social media because that's been around for a long time. I guess for Janine and Joe, for both of you guys, since, you work for brands where you've got a presence online, you're probably responding to things. How do you see organizations leveraging social media as a kind of support channel and doing reputation and management on this channel as well?
Yeah, I'd probably say that we are, one, we are actually knee deep in, maybe, I don't know if I can actually say this, but I guess it's going to be out now on a new website. Okay, so we've done a lot of learning. We are at that stage where we need to pivot, and what I can say is, Julia, is that there are two parts for us. One is how we're using social media to build brand, right? And be there, show we're reliable, show that we're a company that you can trust, so that you get over that first hurdle as a new customer of going, I want to do business with Carol Boys. I haven't purchased with them before, but actually everybody's talking about them. There's good word of mouth. So that's the first aspect. The second one is, how do you use social media for product feedback, right? So I've now made the decision to engage with you as a brand. I want to purchase something. What am I purchasing? And that's, Charlie, where obviously these ratings and reviews are having to play a role. So how do you take that from social media into your website? Because let's be honest, guys, there's a hurdle here, right? That review and comment needs a name. It needs you to click consent, to upload it, usually with an email address. I mean, it's a bit of a headache. I wish I could just sweep social, take all the feedback and chuck it on my website. So the second thing we're doing is pulling Insta and Facebook onto our web pages ultimately. So what we're doing now is using plugins and pulling it into our own online journey and allowing a customer to navigate between social and web very easily. It's taken a lot of time and I'm hoping it lands very well. But Julia, to that, I think to your question around how we're doing it to engage and make sure that customers can make the decision, having everything at their disposal and still come to your site to shop. I think what we really need to do is think about how you link online web into social media and kind of make it seem quite seamless. Yeah, and if that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joe?
Yeah. No, I can actually build a little off that. Look, I think so how we've maybe tackled things on the social side, I think a few things are important. One is also on social, do people know or realize how accessible you are? Meaning, are you a 9-to-5 social media brand or are you around the clock social media brand? So I think that's the first step. We're getting better at that. So for example, we now in the region go to evenings, but we're very much trying to understand, do we have the resource capacity to do 24/7 and weekends, right? And once shoppers, consumers, whatever on social know that you are there and will respond all the time, that automatically changes things. The other thing I think also probably underlooked is investment in community management skills. So, it's great to have people respond, but are they responding in the right way? Do they understand brand tonality? Are they speaking the way, I'll use one of our brands, the way Nescafe should sound online, right? So that persona of Nescafe, is it coming through in the way that the community manager is kind of responding in? Nando's, by the way, do this very well as well, is do we spot conversational moments, right? Do we think there's an opportunity to also just jump in and latch onto a conversation and create more kind of engagement? And again, in some cases we do this well, but I've seen even in SA, some other brands who do it fantastically. Again, Nando's is another one. And then the last one, I think Charlie mentioned it earlier, but the importance of content in social. And what I mean by that today is, Janine mentioned it, but social can be many things. I think today the focus on format selection. So is this a carousel? Is this what type of format? And are we thinking of the content and the creative in a way that's fitting that format as opposed to just a static post or cutting down from a TV shoot that we've done last week because we need some digital content? I think that's also something that's very important. So if we're going to use a carousel or a canvas or whatever, have we designed that piece of content fit for that type of format? I think also very important, Julia, and something even ourselves, by the way, are grappling with, because it costs a lot and you need to have the right agency partners and so on. So yeah, those things, I think, accessibility, tonality, do we sound like the brand? Are we really creating content that looks beautiful on social, or is it force-fitted? All those things, I think, to just build on Janine's point, are also crucial. I'm sure Charlie has tons to say about all this kind of stuff too.
Charlie, do you want to add anything?
I think just, sort of a closeout comment from me. I would really implore all of the CX people, sitting, listening to this today, to go and engage with their counterparts in marketing and say, just trim a little bit off that acquisition budget, give it to me so that I can build a better experience, so that I can foster loyalty, so that I can drive more revenue. We all know that the hardest part of any sales journey is getting somebody to buy in the first place. But once they've bought and they've had a great experience, if you delight, they will buy again and again and again and again. And so if you model your customer acquisition cost in the long term, it demonstrates the significance and the crucial importance of investing in the experience. Do that right, and you're going to be smiling all the way to the bank. So let's stop wasting so much money on acquisition. Let's channel some of that towards loyalty, towards experience, and I think we'll see a significant uptick in the fortunes of business South Africa.
And Charlie, just a quick follow-up on that. I mean, do you see organizations kind of changing the way that they're thinking about this, or is it still sort of like head in the sand, plow forward, huck money at acquisition and ignore the rest? I mean, are you starting to see a change in thinking? I hope.
I think one of the things that is changing people's attitudes is growing awareness of digital ad fraud. Ad fraud has been rampant over the last few years. There are a couple of individuals who have been very outspoken on it. Some of the industry bodies around the world have started to do a little bit more research. And I think this is helping brands understand where they need to put their money. But I don't think we're moving fast enough in the direction of fostering loyalty.
Yeah, and it's hard, it's difficult. I think, organizations are set up to, drive growth in a particular way through particular means. And they've got skill sets built around that, and changing those things is, something that's not easy.
Yeah.
Amanda, I guess I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, practically every single thing that's come up today is at some point means you're going to have a very good look at breaking down silos, working in smaller teams. Charlie earlier on sort of spoke about the young sort of entrepreneurial startup mentality versus the corporates. I think what's challenging about a lot of what we've said is that it actually means substantial business structure change. You've got to work in a more agile way. You've got to be more responsive. A lot of what you've spoken about, Janine, is really that. It's integrating, it's staffing correctly, it's spending the money in the right place, and all of that needs, it needs an agile mentality and actually very strong leadership to get the opportunity and to say, this is what we need, and this is how we need to be organized as an organization for this new world we're in. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is getting that all right.
Yeah, it's one thing to share the data points and the insights about what's happening and what consumers are doing. It's a whole other beast to get organizations to, change the way that they work to do this. But that's why, we have conferences and events like this where people can get together and share ideas and learnings and experiences on what they're doing and what they're seeing. And hopefully we can all walk away from this with some ideas and some food for thought. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining this conversation to unpack some of the themes from this year's study. I know I had fun. I hope you guys did too. I hope that the audience also enjoyed exploring some of this, and the panelists, I'm sure, are also available for offline questions if there's follow-up. And we will hopefully see you guys all in person in August of next year. Cannot wait, to be able to see all of our customer experience friends once again. And thank you so much to the team at the CEM Summit for inviting us to do this panel. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Pooja. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia. Really, really kind of you. It was a great panel, very, very well received. Thank you